Your brain can't tell the difference between doing something and vividly imagining doing it. The same motor regions fire, the same neural signatures light up, the same physiological responses kick in. Which means visualization is either one of the most powerful tools you have access to, or one of the most dangerous traps. And the line between the two is thinner than you think. Researchers at the University of Chicago tested this decades ago with basketball players. One group practiced free throws physically, another group only visualized making free throws, a third group did nothing. The physical practice group improved by 24%, the visualization group improved by 23%, almost identical. The do-nothing group stayed flat. That study has been cited thousands of times, and it's usually where the conversation stops. Successful people visualize, so you should too. But that study left out something critical. The players who visualized weren't lounging on a couch imagining trophies. They were mentally rehearsing the specific motor sequence, the grip, the arc, the release point, the follow-through. Their visualization was granular, mechanical, boring even. They were simulating the process, rep by rep, inside their heads. Compare that to what most people do when they visualize success. Eyes closed, they picture the corner office, the applause after the speech, the number on the bank statement, the finish line, arms raised. It feels productive, motivating, warm. And that warmth is the problem. When you vividly imagine achieving a goal, your brain registers a reward signal. Dopamine releases. Your body relaxes. You experience a faint version of the satisfaction you'd feel if you actually accomplished the thing. Your physiology responds as though progress has already been made. So your drive to act, the tension that would push you off the couch and into the work, dissolves. You've already collected the emotional payoff. Why would you hustle for something you've already felt? Gabriele Oettingen at New York University spent over 20 years studying this exact mechanism. She tracks students visualizing getting good grades, professionals visualizing landing dream jobs, patients visualizing recovery. Across dozens of studies, the pattern held. People who spent time vividly fantasizing about positive outcomes consistently performed worse than people who didn't visualize at all. Lower grades, fewer job offers, slower recovery. The fantasizers felt great. They just didn't do anything. That's a strange inversion of the advice plastered across every motivational poster on the planet. So what separates the basketball players who improved from the dreamers who stalled? The answer comes down to what the brain is actually doing during the visualization, and it splits into two completely different activities. The first is outcome simulation. You picture the end result, the gold medal, the sold-out launch, the six-pack abs. This is what most people mean when they say, visualize your success. Your brain processes this as a consumption experience, something pleasant to observe. It activates reward centers. It lowers blood pressure. It feels like progress. It functions like a sedative. The second is process simulation. You picture the steps, the alarm going off at 5:30, your feet hitting a cold floor, the specific sequence of actions required to move from where you are to where you want to be. This type of visualization activates planning regions. It raises heart rate slightly. It creates a kind of productive discomfort. The gap between here and there becomes vivid, and that gap generates drive. One researcher described outcome visualization as watching a movie of your future self. Process visualization is more like building the storyboard. The movie is passive, the storyboard requires decisions at every frame. And the difference in results between these two approaches is stark. Oettingen's research found that when people combined a vivid positive fantasy with a clear mental picture of the obstacle standing in the way, a technique she called mental contrasting, their effort and follow-through jumped dramatically compared to positive fantasy alone. The obstacle visualization did something the dream couldn't. It activated commitment instead of satisfaction. Think about what that means mechanically. When you picture yourself already thin, already wealthy, already fluent in a second language, you're telling your brain the journey is complete. When you picture the specific friction you'll encounter, the moment at 10 p.m., when you want to skip the workout, the frustration of stumbling over verb conjugations, the spreadsheet that makes your eyes glaze, you're telling your brain the journey is ahead and requires specific preparation. One calms you down, the other winds you up, and being wound up, in this context, is the point. Athletes have understood this intuitively for decades. A sprinter before a race doesn't sit there picturing herself on the podium. She visualizes the drive phase out of the blocks. Knees high, arms pumping. The first 40 meters where races are won or lost. She mentally rehearses the moment at 70 meters where her legs will burn and her form will want to collapse. And she visualizes holding that form through the pain. She's pre-living the hardest part. By the time the gun fires, her brain has already navigated the difficulty once. The real race is a second run. Surgeons do this too. Before complex procedures, many will mentally walk through every incision, every clamp, every potential complication, step by step. They're programming motor sequences into memory before a single cut is made. The visualization is exhausting because it mirrors the actual cognitive load of the task. Compare that again to sitting on your bed, eyes closed, imagining the audience applauding your TED Talk. The applause fantasy takes zero effort. It costs nothing, and that's exactly why it produces nothing. There's a useful way to test which type of visualization you're doing. Ask yourself, does this feel good? If the answer is yes, if the visualization is pleasant, relaxing, energizing in a dreamy way, you're almost certainly doing outcome simulation. You're consuming the fantasy. If it feels slightly uncomfortable, if it creates tension, if you notice yourself mentally flinching at specific steps, that's process simulation. That's the version that transfers to reality. The discomfort is the signal that your brain is actually working. This creates an awkward relationship with the entire vision board industry. Cutting out magazine pictures of beach houses and sports cars and pinning them to a corkboard is pure outcome simulation. It's engineered to feel good. And feeling good is precisely the mechanism that undercuts action. The vision board doesn't fail because the goals are too ambitious. It fails because the format is designed to deliver emotional satisfaction without emotional cost. So what does effective visualization actually look like in practice? It looks boring. It looks like sitting quietly and mentally walking through tomorrow's difficult conversation word by word. It looks like picturing yourself at the gym at 6 a.m., the cold parking lot, the stale air, the first set when your body feels heavy and resistant, and mentally practicing pushing through that resistance. It looks like imagining yourself opening a laptop to write and watching the cursor blink for 5 minutes before a single sentence forms, and staying in the chair anyway. You're rehearsing the struggle. You're pre-experiencing the parts your future self will want to skip, and by doing that, you're building a kind of psychological immunity to the friction that derails most people. There's one more layer to this that rarely gets discussed. Visualization changes what your brain flags as familiar versus threatening. When you encounter a situation your brain has never processed, even mentally, it triggers uncertainty responses, hesitation, anxiety, self-doubt. These are the invisible barriers that stop people before the real obstacles even appear. But when your brain has already processed a difficult moment through vivid mental rehearsal, that moment registers differently when it arrives in reality. It feels recognized, manageable. You've been here before, even if only inside your head. The hesitation drops, the action threshold lowers. You move instead of freezing. This is why astronauts spend hundreds of hours in simulation before a mission. Every emergency scenario, every system failure, every decision point is mentally rehearsed until the response becomes automatic. When something goes wrong at 400 kilometers above Earth, hesitation can mean death. The visualization doesn't prevent the crisis, it prevents the pause. So the next time you close your eyes and picture your future, pay attention to what you're actually simulating. Are you watching the highlight reel? Or are you running the drills? The highlight reel is entertainment. The drills are preparation. And your brain is keeping score of which one you practice more, quietly adjusting your motivation, your readiness, and your likelihood of action based on nothing more than where you aimed the camera during those few minutes with your eyes closed. Every fantasy of the finish line is a vote for standing still. Every rehearsal of the hard part is a vote for showing up when it counts. The uncomfortable version is the one that works, which means the visualization that feels like a reward is the one stealing from you.